Back again with another Arnold review, and today we're going to talk about Conan the Barbarian. Because what's the best in life, Conan? To crush your enemies, to see them driven before you, and to hit the limitation of the women. But yeah, this is a really good one. I mean, when you talk about, like this type of movie, like sword and sorcery type, that type of genre, it's not, for me, a go-to genre, but there's quite a few that I enjoy, including this one. And I would say, actually, I enjoy the next one a little bit more. Conan the Destroyer. I like that one a little bit more. But, again, this is a really good one. I mean, you feel the epicness and the grandness of the adventure, with Arnold and the lead and a great supporting cast. And it's well filmed. But, it's directed by John Milius. Now, a couple of years later, John Milius would direct Red Dawn. A little bit later on, Flight of the Intruder. And he also wrote several films, Jeremiah Johnson, Apocalypse Now, Clear and Present Danger. And it's based on the fantasy stories by Robert E. Howard that were published in the 30s. Now, I haven't read the source material. I haven't read any of that stuff. And when you talk about this film too, there's a lot of information out there that I won't be able to cover here. I just want to hopefully give you a good review. I could talk about this film all day, but, because there's so much info out there. But I'll, again, sort of give you a basic, well, hopefully not too basic, but a good review of this movie. Because, again, this is one that I enjoy. Now, the plot here with this movie, you have Conan in the beginning, which right off the bat, great narration from Mako, another great actor. And this guy you've seen before in several movies, whether it be Pacific Heights. He played a tenant in that movie. He was the voice of Splinter in the TMNT 2007 film. And that was his last project, I believe, before he passed away. And has been, again, you've seen him before and a lot of stuff, movies, but The Perfect Weapon, I forgot he was in that. But, here he's this wizard, and throughout the film you get narration by him, fun narration. But like I said, you have Conan as a young boy, and he becomes a slave after his parents are killed, and his tribe is destroyed by a savage warlord. Thusly Doom, played by James Earl Jones' character. James Earl Jones, plays the main villain here. And when he grows up, he becomes a fearless, invincible fighter, seeking revenge against the main villain. And that's kind of the plot here. And again, right off the bat, you just feel the epicness and the grandness of the movie and the narration from Mako, and the plot is straightforward. It's a revenge plot. But so covering that stuff here, like we've covered some of that. Now let's get into the cast. Now, casting Arnold as Conan, there's a little bit of info here that I'll read off. While they were working to secure the film rights, and I guess it's referring to the producers. They were also contemplating who could play the lead role. A couple of names that were considered early on: Charles Bronson, Sylvester Stallone, which, I don't think either of those guys would have worked. I mean, that year you had Sly do First Blood, and I believe Bronson, he did Death Wish 2. So, even though they had done some really good movies that year, I mean, physically, I don't think either of those guys would have worked. But, the producers had seen a rough cut of Pumping Iron, and they agreed that Schwarzenegger was perfect for the role of Conan due to his huge muscular frame. Schwarzenegger was paid $250,000 and placed on retainer. The terms of the contract restricted him from starring in other sword and sorcery films. Schwarzenegger said Conan was his biggest opportunity to establish himself in the entertainment industry. And you can say, like, Pumping Iron, made Arnold into a household name. And this is the film that really put Arnold on the map. It really, propelled him to, you know, becoming a star. Just a couple of years later, he would have the Terminator come out. Conan the Destroyer, which I think the Destroyer came out before, but this is the film here that really, put Arnold on the map. But the director wanted a more athletic look on his lead actor, so Arnold undertook an 18-month training regimen before shooting began. Besides running and lifting weights, his routines included rope climbing, horseback riding, and swimming. He slimmed down from 240 to 210. And, aside from Conan, two other substantial roles were also played by novice actors. Sabatai, who plays the thief, was Gerry Lopez, a champion surfer. And, he didn't... I think the only major acting experience he had was playing himself in Big Wednesday, which, whatever that is, don't know what that is. But, Schwarzenegger had stayed at Lopez's home for over a month before the start of filming, so that they could rehearse and build up their rapport, for the movie. Sandahl Bergman, a dancer who had bit parts in several theater productions and films, she was recommended to the director because she was in All That Jazz, and she accepted after reading the part. And he wanted actors who would not have any preconceived notions to the project, although the director had reservations when he witnessed the first few takes of the novices at work. He put faith in them improving their skills on the job, and he altered the script to fit their abilities. Schwarzenegger had studied for weeks in 1980 on his speech and voice. For several Hollywood stars to again improve his speech. His first line in the film was a paraphrasing of Genghis Khan's speech about the good things in life, and Arnold delivered it with a more heavy, Austrian accent. And Schwarzenegger, it says right here, Schwarzenegger underwent, if I can talk right, underwent intensive speech training with a director. Each of his later longer speeches was rehearsed at least 40 times. Lopez's lines were also an issue. Although Milius was satisfied, with Lopez's work, his lines were redubbed by a stage actor for the final cut, and a source close to the production says that this was done because Lopez, failed to maintain a certain quality to his voice. So again, it's interesting to read about that. And apparently Sean Connery, says right here too, Sean Connery and John Huston, were considered for roles, but it doesn't say for what. I wonder if Sean Connery was considered for the main antagonist. That would have been interesting to see, Arnold and Sean Connery in the same movie. But, so that, again, that's interesting. But, again, when you talk about Arnold, his performance in the film, to me, it's good here. I mean, maybe you could say there's a couple of rough spots in regards to maybe, delivery, or because he definitely would get better. I mean, again, just a couple of years later, you would have the Terminator, which is a completely different performance. But I can definitely say that, Arnold will get better. But Arnold for the most part still good here. Performance-wise, even though it's an early, I would still consider this an early Arnold film. But, again, he's still good. I mean, even though, again, you can say maybe he has a couple of rough spots, but, he's still really good. And the supporting cast, again, you have James Earl Jones as the main antagonist. And, I'm looking at, I had IMDb up right here, and I'm trying to stretch it out. Okay, there you go. But, James Earl Jones as Thus Doom, again, really good villain. What more can I say about him? Max von Sydow, he's in the film. Sandahl Bergman, Gerry Lopez as Sabotai, the thief. The thief that would be with Conan. And I thought they had a fun little rapport, banter going on. Again, you have Mako in the film as the wizard. Again, definitely having fun here. And again, Mako you've seen before. But yeah, Mako, he's been in other stuff. I mean, Pacific Heights, The Voice of Splinter, and TMNT 2007. That was his last project before passing away. The Perfect Weapon, he was in that. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. And that's a guy that I miss. But, he does a good job here. Again, as the wizard, having a lot of fun with Arnold. I like their back and forth. Yeah, and you have, again, Sandahl Bergman as Valeria. Good support. And some other, like people in the film that are good support. But again, really good cast. Also, too, I have to mention great score from Basil Palladores, who would go on to score, a couple of other great movies. I mean, RoboCop. He also worked on Quickly Down Under. Wait for my wash machine to get done. It'd be great if it played the Conan score, or if it, there you go. You see, why can't I just put in maybe there's a way I could put in the RoboCop theme into my washing machine. That'd be great. But yeah, great score from Basil Palladores. Again, unfortunately, he's passed away, but great composer. Again, RoboCop. The Hunt for Red October, Quickly Down Under. He's done a lot of great stuff. Yeah, so great score, great direction from John Milius. And, talking about some of my favorite moments in the film, I mean, you have a lot of brutal moments, too. Like, brutal, scenes throughout the movie. But when I really think about, like, some of my favorite moments, I mean, like, towards the end when, Arnold is at these rocks, and he's waiting for the bad guys to come, and, he has that great, like, speech. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But, talking to Crom. And he says that quite a few times in the movie, Crom. But I want to find that quote real quick. And sorry if I'm taking a little bit here. There you go. Because he's waiting for these bad guys to come. And he makes his prayer. And he's like, Crom, I've never prayed to you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we're good men or bad, or why we fought, or why we died. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. The Lord pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then to hell with you. And, yeah, I mean, it's a fun, speech by Arnold. And to hell with you. And, a lot of great quotes, throughout the film from Conan, with great narration from Mako. What's the best in life, Conan? To crush your enemies, to see them driven before you, and to hit the limitation of the women. And that's a, great quote to open up the film with. And I liked a little bit, between Conan and Sabotai, where, Conan's asking, what gods do you pray to? And he's like, I pray to the four winds. And Conan's like, to Crom, but I seldom pray to him. He doesn't listen. And I like that little bit of back and forth between, Conan and Sabotai, the fire. And I know I mentioned, like, favorite scenes and stuff, but, first I have to mention, great special effects too, like throughout the film. And again, I just really appreciate the practical effects that were put in. And whether if you have, the main antagonist, he turns into a snake, which is a fun, scene. And like some of the optical effects, where Conan's in this sort of, like he's knocked out or something, or like he's in a sleep, and you have like these demon looking, creatures that are surrounding Conan. I thought that looked very cool. Like for a film that is almost 40 years old, like some of the effects in that scene, where these spirits are surrounding Conan, these demon looking spirits. Again, it was really nice to, really nice to look at. And the scene with the, where the witch and like she's having sex with Conan in the tent, and then Conan throws her into the fire, and her spirit just bounces all over the place, and yeah, that's a weird scene. That was a weird one. But great special effects. I like the optical effect, like the great optical effects that you see in the film. But the movie is brutal. I mean, I know I've said that already, but it definitely brings a brutality. When Arnold kills people, I mean, you see heads come off, you see the blood, you see, the brutality. I don't know what other word I can use to describe. It makes you wonder, like, if Arnold had done that Crusade movie, Paul Verhoeven's, like Paul Verhoeven's Crusade, would have been like this movie on crack or something. For people that don't know, about Arnold's Crusade, go read information about that. That would have been, even more epic movie. Directed by Paul Verhoeven, but yeah, you wonder how that would have turned out. If this is brutal, imagine how that would have been. But again, great score. Great scenes where Arnold's cutting off heads, and you see the blood, and even the main villain gets a great comeuppance. Where he chops off James Earl Jones's head, throws it down the steps, and a lot of memorable scenes where he's being crucified and the buzzard is eating him, like he's pecking on Conan, and Conan bites the neck of the buzzard, and that was fun. And even, like there's some fun moments too with Conan where I'm trying to find that quote where this one guy, he's in the, like, Conan's in this village, like he's wearing this priest uniform, and I'm trying to find that. That's a fun little scene. I'm trying to find it. But yeah, for people that have seen the film, you know what I'm talking about, where he's wearing this priest outfit or something like that, and he has that quote, and that's all you ever need. But yeah, I mean, people have seen the film, know what I'm talking about. But as far as like box office, I didn't even like look up information on the box office. But maybe let's see what I can find here. Conan debuted at the top spot, taking in 9.4 million over the opening weekend. Conan covered 8 weeks after the film's released. During that period, Conan made 38.5 million at the box office here in the U.S. The studios received 22.5 million after deducting the amounts due to the cinema owners. The rental was more than the money Universal had invested in making the film, thus qualifying Conan as a commercial success. And further income from the film was pure profit for the studio. And yeah, worldwide, Conan the Barbarian grossed between 68.9 million and 79.1 million in ticket sales. So, and it says right here, reading down below that, uh, David A. Cook, professor of film studies, said that Conan's North American performance fell short of the amount returned by blockbusters. The rentals of such films from their release in the continent were supposed to be at least 50 million. Conan's rental was the 13th highest for that year. When combined with those for E.T., which was the most successful film of that year, in that year with a rental of 187 million. And so, yeah, I mean, did well at the box office, and again, it really propelled Arnold into that stardom, into that stratosphere. But yeah, overall thoughts on this movie. Again, it's a really good movie. It definitely feels, again, it has that epic feel to it, that grandness, with the score. Conan, Arnold as Conan. I mean, he's still good here, even though you can say he'll get better. And it's not to say that he's bad, but you could definitely tell here that he's, as an actor, as a performer, Arnold is definitely, as far as presence, as far as, persona, it's definitely coming through here. And, by the time you get to the Terminator, it's, you go from there. But, Arnold's still good here. James Earl Jones is really good support. Max von Sydow, Sandahl, Bergman, and the rest of the cast. It's well shot. It's well filmed. Great use of, practical locations, because now when you see this type of film, like if this type of film would come out nowadays, you would just have a lot of, green screen and CG backdrop, and, nothing is tangible anymore. And that's the problem. In this film here, I appreciate it seems you can see the hard work that was put into it. With John Milius at the helm. Great score by Basil Palladores. And the locations, that, like, there were some parts that were filmed in Spain and some other places, and you could see the real locations. You could see the tangibility of these locations, and, fun banter between characters. And it's a really good sword and sorcery movie. Like if I had a top 20, 25 of fantasy movies, I would definitely throw this in there. I mean, even though I prefer the next one a little bit more, but Conan the Barbarian, like I said, it definitely propelled Arnold to another level. And I'm not making it. When I talk about his performance, I'm not saying it's bad. Again, Arnold's still good here, but you could definitely, by the time Terminator rolls around, and he's even propelled even more. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you for watching, and next we're gonna talk about Conan the Destroyer. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.